to order. It is 1 o'clock on the dot. Welcome back to our board meeting. To establish a quorum, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order, December 10th, 2025. The meeting of the Contractors to the rights. My name is Miguel Galares, and I'm the chair. With that, we take a moment to have Ronnie. Sure.
Free Piata.
Here.
Jim Ruane.
Here.
Thomas Reese from the Steve Hopkins. Aaron Tiger here. We are.
Thank you so much. I'd like to also, joining us with CSLB staff today, registered David Folk, Chief Deputy Registered Estelle Jetman, Chief of Licensing Carol Denon, Chief of Enforcement Steve Grove, Chief of Public Affairs Steve White, and Chief of Legislation Rebecca May. Executive Special Project Manager Mike Chudowski, and Executive Officer Analyst Steve Carrasco from DCA. President is Legal Counsel John Kim. Welcome everyone. Before we get away, I'd like to congratulate Steve Carrasco on her recent promotion to Executive Office and Analysis. Katie has supported our board for the past year and a half as a technician in the Executive Office. After Robin Williams was promoted to the position of multiple offender unit, David was selected to backfill that role, and his position as analysis means we'll have more direct role providing board members support and preparing our board to be ready for these board meetings. David, welcome to your new role. I'm pleased that you are advancing your career and seeing something you don't need to yourself. As board members, we'd like to take out and participate with our hard work to staff and provide customer education and outreach. I'm excited to share that in October, I was proud to be part of the CSLB Senior Scammer League for the 4 years in a row in Fremont. And CSLB team provided information about related scams and how seniors can protect themselves with contract. We also want to take a moment to recognize a member, Diana Love, when she met with enforcement staff at the Valencia field office last Monday. And her thoughts on how CSLB can assist with workforce development and opportunities for justice involved individuals who take construction and dispute employment. With that, we move on to the next item, which is B. Public comment for those items not on the agenda, future agenda items requested. And with that, moving on to item B, for public comment for future items. Anyone in the public, please like to speak? Yes,
Not a future item, but just a public comment, if you'll take that now.
either one.
Yes. Richard Markson, honorable board members, registrar vote, and CSLB and DCA staff. Today I'm here on behalf of the American Society of Civil Engineers. I left at all the positions the recently released state infrastructure report. It's released about every 5 years in California. And unfortunately, California's grades continue to be somewhat embarrassing. Overall, taking into account the 17 categories that were evaluated this year, the state scored a C-. Those of you with children at school know that bringing home an overall C- report card is not very good. Obviously, it doesn't do ASCE any good to design new infrastructure if the state is not available and able to afford to fund it, and if the contractor community is not available and has the opportunity to build it with a strong workforce. Just wanted to share this with you. If any of your organizations would like additional briefing on how the report card is developed, and in particular, any of the recommendations that ASCE has to encourage funding for infrastructure development. We've done some rough estimates that to bring California up to a B or B plus is probably close to $10 billion of infrastructure investment. So it's a considerable undertaking, but considering the economic vitality of the state is dependent on strong infrastructure, it's something that we all need to come to grips with. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me backfill by saying the board that values public input and part of the consumer protection mission allow us to enough time is that our meeting today. This gentleman was so kind enough to keep his comments to less than 3 minutes. But those of you in the future, keep them comments 3 minutes each will be welcome. If your comments do not involve any item on the agenda today, there will be time where you can make one. If you have comments on one of our agenda items, we encourage you to wait until that item is up. So we'll give you the opportunity to make comments at that time. We'll also ask the public related to agenda items currently before the board. There are a few other rules that apply. First, California law prohibits board members from discussing any matter brought up during public comment, and board members are not allowed to act on any item not on today's agenda. Second, if you want the board to discuss a topic not on the agenda, you can ask us to consider it by placing it as an issue on agenda meetings. And finally, if you have an application, complaint, or disciplinary charge pending before the board, you ask not to discuss those details of your case or pending complaints. That's because the board members will be judges, may be judges, by law are not permitted to receive evidence or information that's not part of the administrative record in that case. Having said that, do any board members have any comments to make that are like to place on future agenda items? This time?
I'd like to pick up on this excellent comment from the item to see what is CSLB's role in responding to that, because I think it's a concern for all of us.
Any board members have any comments to make that are
Hello.
Hello, how was your lunch?
I didn't get to go. As soon as I got there, I got an alert to get online and check our sound and everything at this board meeting. I've been here. I fixed one of the fences.
Already?
Yeah.
Wow.
Unfortunately,
Apologies for that.
is that somebody on?
Yes.
Okay. I had bad hearing. I hope somebody has that. No.
And we won't be.
It was just a mistake.
Right.
It's okay.
Let's yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Filardo. Most people call me Filardo. I'm a general contractor for 40 plus years. My comment or question is I've been involved with the SWIFT program for many, many years. I've been trying to find out why they've made changes and I cannot get any answers. One of the changes is they want to make sure that the locations that we use in the SWIFT program are not close to schools, but it's changed in the last years. I asked questions on how far away it needs to be. The furthest I got was it said 1,500 feet as the bird flies. Well, most criminals don't fly. And what's concerned to me is that doing that is basically undermining our law enforcement. We have law enforcement there, and there's, well, I don't, but they do, have law enforcement that takes care of all that. I think that's the most valuable program through the state licensing board to make sure that people are licensed that are dealing with seniors, other people that could cause a lot of damage if they're doing their items wrong. So my concern is I'm trying to find out why that exists, and it might need to be removed or altered. If you need to put a dog, police officer dog on it, I can chase them down. But to say that 1,500 feet from the school just basically cuts us off at the lakes because there's no way we're gonna find places. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more comments from the board or the public? Any comments from those on the WebEx? All right, thank you. Hearing and seeing that, we're gonna go on to a presentation of a certificate of. It is now my privilege to recognize the CSLB outstanding person, Sarah Hall, for the job well done. The work Sarah has done each day embodies CSLB's mission of public service and consumer protection. Sarah joined CSLB in 2019, working as a student assistant back in 2022. After working at the Department of Education for 2 years, Sarah joined CSLB in 2024 to an hourly coordinator. Sarah is frequently on the road or in the sky, traveling to and from public speaking events. He's been instrumental in organizing and delivering procedure scammer, stoppers, and consumer scammer stopper presentations across the state. Sarah educates seniors and all Californians about how to hire contract people and scams. Her work helps prevent financial exploitation and encourages Californians are better informed and protected. There is positive attitude and dedication, professionalism, and ability to connect with the public have made a real difference. She represents CSLB with integrity and heart, and we are incredibly grateful for her contributions. Thank you, Sarah, for your tireless efforts and your such a strong advocate for California service. And with that, I want to welcome you up so that I can present this.
Thank you.
I personally have worked with Kira in Fremont, and she's always had me ready to go and ready to prepare, which I know we do. So thank you, Kira. Any board members would like to tell me on, has anybody else been able to do a senior scammer that have participated? Not yet?
I did a scam. I did a senior scam. I ended up being part of the scam by accident. But it was the long story, short story. I was there, they had a break in between. I went outside to make a phone call, and the next potential scam person came early. So I was outside, and he actually thought I was, I guess, part of something. So they had to make up an excuse as to why I was really there. But it was very interesting with the sheriffs being there and how they conducted themselves in English and in Spanish and behind the scenes watching and everything. So if you have an opportunity, try to go to a senior stand.
So it's a great event. And the seniors are very, they're anxious, they're nervous. They don't know, and they come specifically to get good information. If you participate, yeah, it's worthwhile endeavor. And with that, again, thank you, Sarah. And we're gonna go on to item number D, which is the executive item. An update starting with review of June 13th, 2025 board meeting minutes and November committee meeting summaries. These meetings and summaries are in the packet on page 11 and 81. Any board members have any edits to the meeting minutes summaries? Go ahead and take a moment to review those. And unless there is an objection, we will vote for September 5th, 2025 board meeting summaries reports as one item. I'm also proposing that the 5 committee meeting reports be voted on as one item. As I remember, on November 17th, 2025, executive and enforcement and public affairs met, and on November 18th, 2025, the licensing and the legislative committee met.
So moved. Second.
Okay. We have a motion.
It's like to approve all the minutes.
Okay, thank you, Joe. And who's the second?
Right.
Right, okay, thank you. Moving on to the committee summaries, we have a motion to approve the November 17, 2025 Executive Enforcement and Public Affairs Teleconference Committee Meeting Summary, and the November 18, 2025 Licensing and Legislative Teleconference Committee Meeting Summary. We have a motion for that. Okay, now this would be a vote, since we've already had a motion in a second, let's have a vote for the committee meeting on the 17th and 18th.
So if we were at the community meeting, the only word you were at the community meeting.
You can abstain. You can abstain, yeah, it's like.
David,
We have a motion for the.
we had a
We have
motion,
first and second.
let's read the motion. Just so we have the original motion. Henry,
Ron, and Rodney Phillips was second. Oh, for the first one was Joel, and then Rod. I mean, for the committee meeting.
I'll say.
Second. Alrighty. Miguel Galarza. Alan Gavin, who's absent. Rodney Cobos. Joel Barton.
Aye.
Amanda Guy.
Abstain.
Diana Love. Aye. Jacob Lopez, with an excused absence. Michael Mark.
Aye.
Henry Nutt.
Aye.
Steve Nelly.
Aye.
Joseph Cristiano.
Aye.
Jim Wayne.
Aye.
Thomas Reese has an excused absence. Mary Tiger. Abstain. Motion passes.
thank you. With that, we're going to go on to the registered report. For that, please turn your books 85 and 90. Richard Brigade Code will now present reports on the following topics: for South Los Angeles County disaster response updates, an enforcement audit review and recommendations, an update regarding the analytical study on licensed practices and resources needed, and a review and discussion regarding the restricting members.
Thank you, Chair Galarza. So on page 85, we have a summary of staff's outreach, education, and enforcement, and that's been a low priority for CSLB. And that the wildfires occurred almost a year ago, January of 2025. And we're looking at our past practice with the Paradise Fire as to what worked well, what we could improve upon. You may recall in Paradise, we did receive approximately 400 consumer complaints. And the goal for the Los Angeles wildfires, of course, is to receive minimal complaints. And I'm very pleased to report today that we ran our numbers for the last 12 months and we've only received 24 complaints. So that's a real success. And 2 of them are unlicensed. But when you think about Paradise, where a lot of the harm occurred, it was because of an unlicensed contractor that was fraudulently using somebody else's license and even put up billboards, was taking a lot of money and then not performing the work. And so, we really want to keep the message out there that we want wildfire survivors to hire a licensed contractor to make sure the contract includes a clear description of the work that's going to be performed, when it will be performed, And we don't want the payments, if we have progress payments, to exceed the value of the work that's been being paid for. So important. I just kind of wrap this up. At 2 o'clock today, Los Angeles District Attorney Nathan Hodgman is going to conduct a press conference in Los Angeles. They did arraign 5 unlicensed individuals that were out to seek work in the wildfire burn area. And it's important to remember that contracting without a license in a declared disaster area is a felony. So we really appreciate Nathan Hodgman's support of our consumer protection efforts and also his staff that have worked so closely with our enforcement staff. They move on. Is there any questions regarding that? Can I take questions after each one? Here's my question. Okay, so moving on to page 86. Always looking for opportunities to improve, provide training for our staff to determine if there's any, in this case, IT opportunities that would make things a little more streamlined. So a number of, the executive office took the lead on it. Steve Grove, our chief, played a part in looking at enforcement cases. We looked at 346 enforcement cases. These are cases or complaints filed by consumers out of the 12 offices that handle consumer complaints, taking a look to see if we're applying the law uniformly. Have there been different trends with the filing of complaints? What can we do to make things more streamlined as far as it relates to a consumer filing complaint, but also the staff performing the investigation? Overall, the enforcement staff is doing a great job. We did find that a lot of the complaints relate to contracts that are not completed. And unfortunately, many of these contractors have taken money for work they did not do. And so we really do have to address that. And just 3 quick findings from the audit. One is we need to continue to focus on training for our enforcement staff. They really appreciate training opportunities. We have our in-house training. We're also working with the Department of Consumer Affairs on an enforcement academy with them. So CSLB does have its own enforcement academy. Department of Consumer Affairs is looking to do an enforcement academy as well. So training's an opportunity we want to pursue, continue to pursue. We need to look at hiring a forensic auditor because a lot of these complaints have financial crimes. Again, it's taking money, not doing the work. We need to have a forensic auditor to help. When we've served a financial search warrant to put that audit report together to refer to a district attorney with a request that they consider filing criminal charges. And just finally, the last thing would be completing the enforcement modernization plan. This is something that our chief deputy Stell is forward. So next, we have the analytical study that our fire chair Michael Mark was the champion for, and we've had some we've hit some hurdles with this, as you all know. Initially, we were going to use Sac State. They decided they didn't want to conduct the audit. We have test development staff that have similar educational background as Sac State did. And they asked if they could conduct this audit. I'm real pleased to report that they have already taken that on. So the board had approved $200,000 to hire a consultant, but we're going to be able to do this in-house with existing staff. They should not need any overtime to do it. And I think it's going to be a real positive outcome. Just want to hit 3 quick bullets as to what they're looking at. They're looking at the business tax certificate data, the business licenses. Contractors who are going out getting a business license to do construction work, do they have a contractor's license? So they're matching all that up. We're looking at our complaints. We receive about 5,000 unlicensed practice complaints a year. So, look at those. Idea being to reach out to those consumers. Is there a way that we could have additional information on our website as an example to help them to verify their contractor's license? What lessons can we learn by looking at those complaints? Also, online advertisements, that's so troubling where you have these different platforms that allow unlicensed people to advertise. And when you look at that and you research the person advertising with CSLB's records, I did it myself personally, and I found about 40% do not appear to be licensed. I could be out of name style, but there's a lot of them out there. So yeah, this report should be done by June. They're going to be making a recommendation on whether additional resources would be needed for outreach for public information office, but also, do we need more enforcement staff? Our proactive SWIFT staff are comprised of, Steve, correct me, I think 27 investigators.
Correct.
And there's 58 counties, so it's not, not even an investigator for each county, so that'll be something they'll be reporting on. And move on to the next thing. I'm missing one here, but construction and lending concern. Yeah, some construction and lending concerns. As many of you know, we had significant problems with the solar industry, taking money, the contractors getting paid directly by the lenders. And this puts the consumer in a bad spot because if their contractor's already been paid, they have to make payments on that loan, but they lack the leverage, so they're accountable, the contractor accountable. And many contractors, unfortunately, I'm going to say it's not the majority, but some contractors are paid by the lender and they don't perform the work. And now we're seeing that in the accessory dwelling unit. Thanks, Steve Bailey, for his work on our video. We got to do all that we can to try to educate consumers. But what about the lenders that are continuing to do this? And our enforcement staff have put together a legislative proposal to try to tighten up the lending laws. Now, that would fall under banking and finance in the legislature, which many of you know are under the Business Professions Committee. So it may not be a bill that the board could support, but that doesn't mean that we don't need legislation. And so we do have a meeting coming up with the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation, DFPI, and that's next week. We're going to be meeting with them. We have provided them our alleged proposal, and hopefully they'll want to collaborate with us on potential solutions. But what staff are looking at is just a way to be more sure when somebody's using DocuSign, they know what they're agreeing to. And that's a huge problem. There's been some talk about maybe needing a notary as an example, making sure they have a hard copy of it before they sign up. We have situations, complaints we receive where we do style loan stacking. You have multiple loans for the same work for the same job. If somebody signed up for all of this, huge problem. And again, contractors getting paid in advance of doing the work and not always doing the work. And while you can refer those to the DA for prosecution, you cannot always get the money back for the consumer. So I will keep them updated on our meeting with DFPI next week. And I think that is it. So if any questions, we're happy to answer them.
I have a question, David. One of the things I was looking at online the other day was manufacturing homes and, being ADUs and being put in the back of properties. And I saw one specific, I can't remember the name, I have it at work, but it was like 10,000 up front. And halfway through the job, it was a $340,000 project. It was 10,000 up front, 130,000 in the middle, and then the rest of it would be done. But they had it scheduled as a financing thing. So even the middle doesn't mean that the construction's done halfway through. It just means that you hit the midway point and that payment's automatically being pulled. So that's, I see it's there and I hear about it all the time. And it seems like it's scheduled that way, even though the product might not even be built yet. You've already paid halfway through. So I don't know if that's something that gets caught, if it's it's not being fair, and they're not being forthcoming saying, you're gonna be paying on this thing starting, day one on $10,000 upfront. And then in the middle, you're paying for you're at 150. And then you get the rest of the loan at the end when you're completely done. It's a 2-year process, 3-year process. So at a year and a half, you've already put out, over $150,000 in loans, and you have nothing. And they're not building anything on site. They're just dropping it. So they're building it somewhere else. So you're not even seeing any work being done. So it can actually be already prepared and done, but they just hold it for 3 years and then bring it, or they complete it. I don't know the process. It doesn't seem like it's right for somebody to be paying something that they have no control over. They can't see anything that's being done on site at all, period.
Yeah, it's very troubling, and I'm wondering if the California building officials could play a part in coming up with additional information for consumers, because there's 2 problems. One is, you point out, if they build it off-site, you pay for something that may never be delivered. That's troubling. But also, how do we structure progress payments to work that's been completed? I'm wondering if you couldn't do that similar to how building officials as yourself would conduct inspections. So maybe we can look at the inspections and see if there's some kind of information we can put on our website that would help consumers.
Right, I mean, to the chairs, right, but I've reached out to different organizations, one that enforces the manufacturer, right? So that's housing community development, that they take care of that. Unfortunately, saying this is, I've seen some manufactured things that have been done that don't meet the county or the city's codes for that area. So it could be built a different way, and then it gets put in place. We don't look at it because it's certified. We have no jurisdiction in there. So we have everything that's making the point of connection to it, but nothing else beyond that. So that's a big thing. The other part is you have, for us down here, it's PG&E and all the electric and gas or anything else that's being done. Those are also being held back too, because it's taking, a long period of time for that to get ready. PG&E won't do anything until the property's, on site. My neighbors down the street, they put ADU, it was 2 pieces, they had to have it lifted, everything was done, it was great. But the connection for the electricity and everything took another 4 or 5 months. The water connection took 3 months. This took, and it was all that. So on top of just the structure being built for 3 years, that's another 6, 7 months that you really can't use it at all, because you can't turn on light, you can't run any water. It's just sitting there, it's a box. So those are the things that you're starting to see more and more happening if they're not being built on site. I know we can't require them to build on site, but I'm just saying that it becomes something that's an eye-opening thing for people, and every time it comes up, I'm trying to help them as much as I can, saying, well, you need to make sure of this, make sure of that, make sure of this. Make sure you're asking that it's being built to this standard or that requirement. And I think that's something that they also need to know as well, that just because somebody's building it in Idaho doesn't mean that you can use it in California. And they don't realize that sometimes.
Like you call it, we come up for the meeting.
Then I had one other question. I know that you're getting into the online complaints, and they can post and they can attach things. When they do that, do we have a way of putting something out there? So, I don't know, I hate saying this, but my dad's 80 years old. If I told him to get on his computer and attach something to it, he'd take a sticky note and put it on. He's not gonna know how to do that. And I'm not being mean about it. He just doesn't even have a laptop. They have a little computer, but it's old and they don't know how to do it. Is there a way to have it where they're unable or can't do it and they want to complain, actually have a contact with somebody that would actually come back to them and will either walk them through it or give them somewhere else to go to have a face-to-face? Because I know my father and I know my twin brother, computer, they don't do anything, but they want this. And I hate saying it's an old school thing, but they want face-to-face. And a lot of them, older people that are getting scammed already, they want face-to-face. They want to see that person and know that they're being helped. I go out to a lot of places when I have issues or problems, and it's usually face-to-face, and it's usually older people that want to sit there and talk to you one-on-one. Because on a computer, and I hate saying this, on a computer, everything gets lost in translation. You're reading words, but it's not what they mean. They're expressing it, there's no expression behind it. So having that face-to-face sometimes does help a lot.
Let me just make a comment on that. So the current practice today is that you do mail in your exhibits, your contract for payment, you mail all that in the US mail, and our staff will scan it for you. There's no discussion about not allowing that to continue.
Okay.
It's just some consumers would prefer to be able to scan it and email it as an attachment to the complaint. We just want to be very careful that without, however we track it, it's not forward facing, but we don't disclose that to members of the public, only for our investigation. So absolutely, and Steve and I met last night, actually, and Steve was, once again, talking about doing side business and making sure people are out there meeting with the consumers, just like you're saying, and sitting down with them and going over their evidence.
I can just comment back on your first comment. If I wanted to mention for the payment part in regards to, the large contractor, what we do, your payments are tied to, progress payments are tied to your installation. And so that means you have to have someone come out that evaluates that his work is 50%, 30%, whatever that is, that that's the payment you're getting. So they can tie it to a actual progression of work installed. Because the incentive, you're almost incentivizing a contractor to build this and get this upfront money. And they're gonna do that times 5 times. They're gonna be cash positive and no incentive to go out and do anything, and so that's where we have to tie in the actual progress of the work done with the actual payment.
Yeah, that's so important. And so you'll see our messaging and our consumer alerts and others, it has been changed to be very clear that a contractor cannot request or accept payments that exceed the value of materials or work performed. And who establishes that? Well, normally for investigation would be our industry expert program. But when you really look at it, if a contractor has been paid a certain amount of money towards a contract, is there a balance remaining where that consumer can hire another contractor to complete that project? And that's where the law is set up so that they would have those resources available to them. The trick is, though, to get information out so a consumer can make an informed choice to look at that payment schedule and say it's not right. Because the problem we have today is contractors will say, I can only accept a deposit of $1,000. Put this in big bold letters. But then the next payment could be 70% of the contract price. Far exceeds the value of work that was done.
Yeah.
Change gears. Well, I was just gonna say one thing on top of that then. The only problem is where it's being constructed at. Location. In California, we can control, look at this and that. But if it's being done outside, that's, we're bringing it from another state. What control do we have it here to control something that's being done there? Unless it's being done here, there's no real control of saying, oh, this is the contract you signed, but it's for somebody that's building it in Idaho.
Yeah, no, Rebecca, it's going to talk about the Berman bill. I mean, we're still looking, the board had sponsored legislation last year that came a 2-year bill, and we're still looking for ways to make that bill beneficial to consumers. So the ideas you're bringing up will certainly be discussed. Rebecca, did you want to add anything to that?
Through the chair, turning back to page 86 and 87, that audit, 346 cases, that's pretty important. How for the audit from the enforcement team and management team. And I thought it was pretty key where you're saying staffing consideration for the hiring of a forensic auditor. That deals with white collar crime within the construction industry. In my opinion, I know we're going to have a strategic plan coming. Is to have another audit of a plan of attack to increase enforcement on licensed contracting. So we can kind of get those together, and if not, add it to a strategic plan, that'd be helpful. Also, when we're talking like forensic auditors, everyone here, labor partners know, sometimes there's underpayment of wages. So if there's a forensic auditor who's looking at the deep books of a bad contractor, something where they can then tip it off to the proper agencies, but if they know there's something fishy going on, or that goes to like a DLSC or a Division of French Standards. Especially as if we're gonna have someone as complaints come in and someone's actually really looking at their books, like they spend over the DA's offices and the other state partners. That's what I had a comment there. Second comment. I'm gonna thank you again on all the hard work on the study. We're right on track from a past enforcement committee's strategic plan. Fourth quarter 2025, everything working going forward. So I appreciate all the hard work from your office there, David. And that's all I have.
Any comments from the public?
I've been to building ADUs and a lot of the issues that he's stating are very, very important, mostly because some of this stuff is not up to code in the area that you're working. So I think he's right on about a lot of that kind of stuff, and that it's important that the progress of payments, I don't think that's followed at all. Most people will take 10% or 1,000, whichever is least, and the next payment's hundreds of thousands, because they don't have an established percentage or amount, or there's nobody that can make that determination. Some banks that loan to do major buildings, because I have friends that do those inspections, the bank will send the inspector out to verify that that amount of work's been done. So an idea of having maybe other contractors that are not involved with that contract might be able to hire something to make that determination.
I just, the gentleman just said, a lot of the banks that I deal with, when they're dealing with high-rise buildings or other projects that are large value projects, they'll base it on signatures that they get from us at the progress of what the work, where it's at. So rough stage, and it's occupy certain areas of the building, temporary certificates, stuff like that, and then the bank will give loans out accordingly. Because you got to realize that like a 60-story building, it's not going to be all finished at one time. And you're talking $100 million loan. They're not giving them a full $100 million loan. They're only getting them a partial until they get to a certain point, and then they get the rest, knowing that the project's going to be completed. So they're looking for certain signatures. So I deal a lot. My staff deals with a lot. Whole building department deals with a lot of that progress of where are we at, where are your signatures at? Provide us this piece of paper that shows everything signed and approved. Here's the other part of your loan. I think with Joe saying, it makes sense with these ADUs that are being done without materials and without that progress being checked. Building it on site, I'm looking at it, we're inspecting it, we're gonna see the progress. The homeowner's gonna see the progress, it's gonna see that permit and where it's going to. Out of sight, being done in a factory that somebody's putting stuff together, putting it all done, they're not gonna see anything, they're just being given a schedule. And schedules get delayed, but the banks still pay because they know that that's getting built. They have the contract, they know it's gonna get done, it's a big manufacturer. Doesn't mean it's gonna be done at the time frame the consumer wants it at. That's the difference between a manufacturer, for me anyway, and actually being done on site. You're seeing the progress when it's on site, you're seeing the signatures when it's done on site. You're not seeing that when it's done somewhere else.
Did you say that this item, which we've had subsequent discussion of today, falls under the enforcement committee? And would it make sense to maybe propose an ad hoc committee to discuss this?
That might make sense, because if we have a pending bill, let's go back and by saying yes with enforcement. But I'm almost wondering about legislation, which we kind of need to all be working together and trying to solve this problem. So you might want to, you might think about it.
So those of you that would be interested in serving on the active committee, Steve, certainly, and anyone else who can discuss before the end. With that, if there are no more other comments, none from the WebEx.
The Mirrorless Exemption Advisory Committee meeting met on November the 7th, along with myself and member Henry III, to discuss SB 456. This is a new law that came into effect on January the 1st. It exempts artists applying a mural from licensing. The discussion focused on the scope of the exemption, including incidental preliminary site preparation and finishing work. We decided that holding a stakeholder meeting with the bill's sponsors would assist us in better understanding the bill's intent and assist with CSLB's public outreach and enforcement efforts. The stakeholder meeting was held on Tuesday, December the 9th, and attended by member Nutt and me, CSLB staff, representatives from the legislature, the city of Sacramento, the California arts advocates, and a muralist. The meeting was very informative. Legislative staff and sponsors of the bill concurred that the exemption applies to the application of the mural as described in the Enact Statute Business and Professions Code 7050. As a reminder, the exemption applies to artists who draw or paint a mural pursuant to an agreement with a person who can legally authorize the work. A mural is defined as a unique work of fine art drawn or painted directly onto a building or structure. This would include sealing of the structure and possibly applying a base coat. After the mural is completed, it may be necessary to apply a protective coating. This activity is only exempt when in service of creating the artwork itself. Any repairs to the existing structure, like patching, stucco repair, replacing wood, or other alterations to the structure itself are not part of the exemption and should only be done by a licensed contractor. Further installation of a fixed scaffold that is attached to the surface is not exempt and requires a CSLB license. This consensus was for CSLB to prepare an industry bulletin to clarify the scope of the muralist exemption with the intent interpretation by muralists, contractors, and public agencies, and to February 1st, 2025. You should have a copy of the draft bulletin at your station for review. Before we review the draft bulletin, member Nutt, would you please like to add your observations?
Thank
about
you
the
so
stakeholder
much.
meeting?
Yeah, this was a great meeting, very informative, just kind of understanding some of the dynamics of being a muralist and what's important to them to preserve the work. And I think the bulletin is very clear in regards to where the lines are. And they educated me in regards to their work and how they approach it. I didn't understand some of the pre-work as well as far as the preparing the wall and then also the conserving the work at the end. That is more about an art preservation than it is instruction in a sense. So I think it's a very good meeting to have and help clear up any doubt I have about the bulletin.
Thank you, member Nutt. Are there any comments from the board? Questions? Seeing none, any comments or questions from the public? Okay, seeing none, thank you. And I will turn it back over to the chair Dawson.
And thank you, member Love, for that briefing. With that, I'd like to turn it over to member Henry Nutt III, who is chair of the IT committee. And
Thank you, Mr. Garza. So the IT Advisory Committee met on November 17th and discussed the status of various IT projects. We received an update on the status of the ongoing sole owner online application project. That project is nearing completion with an expected launch in spring of 2026. In terms of upcoming projects, we received presentations on two options for the next priority: a mobile phone app and the Enforcement Modernization Project. The Nevada's board chair, Chief of IT, joined us to share their experience with deploying a mobile phone app, including the feedback they received from users and the rate of downloads. We learned that relatively few downloads took place, and the majority of users prefer to access the website directly to meet their needs. We were also presented with a demo of a proof of concept for the Enforcement Modernization Project's phase to automate workflows for the intake and once the sole owner application is available to stream, we would like to staff to assess the impact and potentially secure resources to expand this concept by bringing partnership corporations and limited liability applications online. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any comments from board members? Anything that's briefly? Any comments from the public? Hearing and seeing none, thank you. Under that, I think that's pretty good. Next, we'll move on to the information technology update. There we print page 97 for our packet. And Chief Deputy Registrar Estelle Jenkins is here to present that update. Estelle?
Thank you, Chair Galarza. CSLB's IT division successfully completed the Windows 11 upgrade in the first week of November, making CSLB the first Department of Consumer Affairs force to complete this effort. Behind the scenes, the IT team managed the Windows upgrade with precision, tracking progress, coordinating with field offices, and proactively resolving issues in real time. Their efforts resulted in a smooth rollout across CSLB HQ and all field locations. There have been 0 hours of reported downtime for users and no noticeable uptick in service desk tickets associated with this major system upgrade. As reported in the November committee meetings, the cloud-based enterprise document management system, which we call EDMS, was implemented in May to replace the legacy imaging workflow automated system. This improvement was meant to bring greater workflow efficiency, enhance security, and enable better records tracking. It's been a few months now, and staff across multiple teams have adopted the new procedures and found that both the EDMS software and the integrated box platform exceed their expectations in usability and performance. So looking ahead, as Member Nutt said, the enforcement modernization introduced by the IT Advisory Committee will build upon the same box platform. By standardizing on this proven platform and reusing connector logic to backend systems, this initiative will expand on the existing EDMS infrastructure, ensuring consistency, reliable, and cost-effective development. This strategic alignment reinforces our commitment to modernize operations while leveraging successful technologies that are already in place. As Member Nutt stated, the sole owner online application project is nearing completion with an expected launch in spring of 2026. And you may recall that CSLB's IT chief accepted a promotional opportunity outside of CSLB in late spring. And we're very proud of the way that our IT managers, Raju Shah and Michael Collins, have stepped up to keep things moving during the backfill process. And now we're in the final stages of hiring our new IT chief. Back to you, Chair Larson.
Thank you. Are there any members of board members? Any comments from board members? Or is delegated?
I'd like to add just quickly, the fact that we have Nevada and just getting that insight was really helpful, and not going down a rabbit hole to kind of discover something we would implement that we doesn't need. And so they were able to give us that real-time data to say, hey, this part is great, but users the members aren't, or consumers aren't utilizing this part of it, so don't waste your time use right now. So I think that was a good use of our resources and not waste our time and spend unnecessary money on that thing.
Thank you, Member Nutt. Any other board members? Any members from the public? any members, any people in the cyber world. With that, our next item is D5, which is a budget update. And we move our packages to page 101 of your packet, and Rebecca May, Chief Registration, will present on behalf of our management states. Rebecca?
Thank you, Chair Galarza, and good afternoon, everyone. The budget update begins with the budget summary on page 101 for fiscal year 24-25. CSLB has an authorized budget of 83 million. The final year-end projections are 96 million. Report that we collected nearly 41 million, which is a 2.3% increase compared to the previous year. On page 103, it shows our fund condition, which projects out to budget year 26-27. The middle column is the current year, which shows our beginning fund balance at 56.8 million. If year-end projections are realized as discussed on page 101, then we should increase our reserves by year end to 62 million, which equates to about 8 months of reserve. Turning to page 104, the chart shown is the construction management education account fund condition, which we continue to see an increase in annual donations. I'm glad to report that we received final approval by the Department of Finance to increase our grant disbursements this fiscal year from 175,000 to 225,000. This will be discussed further in the licensing updates. And so finally, let me touch on the statistical summaries provided on the pages 105 and 106. For the first quarter of this fiscal year, we show an increase of almost 10% in original licenses issued. Renewals also appear to be steady for the first quarter with a 1.7% increase over 2 years ago. And that includes budget update.
Any comments from board members?
Great job, Stacy, keeping it going, 18 months of reserves, that was great. I think right now with the ledge change, I'm not sure going into effect, 12 months is the max, right?
It's effective January 1, yes. It goes from 6 months, previously was the cap, to 12 months.
Thank you.
Any members from the public? None? With that, we will move on to the administrative update. Please send your packages to page 109, and Chief Deputy Registrar Deputy will give an update. Steph?
Thank you, Chief Galarza. So first we'll discuss the vacancies. CSLB averaged 30 vacancies out of 423.5 authorized positions during the first quarter of this fiscal year, which runs July 31st through September 30th. And this is 7% vacancy rate, and that's slightly above the board's goal of 5%. And our staff continue to attend job fairs and prioritize recruitments for hard-to-fill positions. And those hard-to-fill positions usually are in high cost of living areas of the state. Okay, so for the Career Development and Mentoring Program Steering Committee and Training, during the November 17th Executive Committee meeting, Chief of Administration Ingrid Wachowski provided a summary of all the trainings that CSLB managers and supervisors successfully received this past year, as well as the 2026 goals that are focused on team dynamics, classification-specific courses, and employee development courses, as well as leadership training-oriented courses. In addition to these trainings, the personnel manager is working to create a supervisor's toolbox, which will be located on CSLB's intranet. This will be a resource for supervisors and managers to use and will include recordings and slides of past training courses, examples, and probation reports, performance appraisals, and corrective memos, and more. We anticipate that being completed and rolled out this month. On page 111, the administration update provides a detail on business services sections such as facilities and our contracts, both executed and in progress, as well as our fleet. Back to you, Chair Flores.
Any member, any comment, can discuss something.
I just have a quick question. Estelle, did I hear you saying that the fiscal year was July 31st through September?
Did I say that?
Yes.
I'm sorry, that is incorrect. Thank you for noting that. It's July 1st.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any other board members? Any members from the public? No? Okay, very good, thank you. We will then move on, to item number C, executive, please turn the tax page 117 of the packet. And we will include, item E, legislation, giving us the legislation portion of our, this committee, Chair Joe Martin. Joe.
All right, thank you, Chair Galarza. I'm Joel Barton, Chair of the Legislative Committee. Let's get started with agenda item 1A and B. Review and discussion regarding section 100 rulemakings. As you may remember, a section 100 rulemaking allows CSLB to revise or delete text in the California Code of Regulations without complying with the general rulemaking process because proposed change is minor or non-substantive. Section 100 rulemakings was made with the understanding that CSLB staff would report any approved section 100 changes at a future board meeting. In 2025, staff promulgated 2 section 100 rulemakings. This achievement supports the board's strategic plan goal to review and amend regulations for clarity and understanding and to ensure they are current. Because these rulemakings have already been approved by the Office of Administrative Law and are in effect currently, staff is requesting no action from the board today. Chief May, can you briefly describe these changes?
Thank you, Member Barton. So staff sought and received approval from the Office of Administrative Law, or OAL, for 2 section 100 rulemakings this last year. There's a brief synopsis and updated text for your viewing on page 117 of the materials. The first section 100, agenda item 1A, updated references to gender in 2 code sections, California Code of Regulations 831 and 883. This section 100 simply updated references from he and his to they and their to reflect current day references to gender. This section 100 update was approved by OAL and made effective on June 26, 2025. The second section 100, agenda item 1B, deleted outdated licensing processing times in California Code of Regulations 827 and 828 that were no longer required due to the repeal of the underlying statute in 2003. Providing this data was not necessary because the current regulation, section 827, already provides timeframes. These include notification upon receipt of an application, a 5-day window to notify applicants if their application is incomplete or has deficiencies, and a 115-day timeframe to determine if a completed application meets minimum requirements. In addition, licensing processing times are reported weekly on CSLB's website. Staff, we also updated the term salesman to salesperson in this code section. And this section 100 update was approved by OAL and made effective on December 2nd. Back to you.
Thank you, Chief May. Are there any board member comments or questions regarding the section 100 rulemakings? Seeing no further board member comments or questions, let's take a public comment. Are there any members of the public wanting to comment on the section 100 rulemakings? Seeing none, thank you. Now moving on to agenda item 2. Review, discussion, and possible action on 2025 board-sponsored legislation. Let's begin with item 2A, AB 521 Korea. A summary for this bill can be found in the meeting materials on page 125. This bill expressly provides that CSLB is not liable for attorney fees and civil claims involving a contractor's cash deposit filed with CSLB in lieu of a licensed bond. AB 521 was signed into law and will be effective January 1, 2026. Staff are requesting no action on this agenda item today. Chief May, can you provide a brief update on how CSLB will implement this legislation?
Thank you, Member Barton. So implementation of AB 521 is pretty simple. Staff will need to notify the Supervising Assistant Attorney General at the Office of the Attorney General of the bill's passage so that they can notify staff in the licensing and tort section. And public affairs staff will also include a blurb on AB 521 in the next newsletter. Back to you, Member Barton.
Thank you, Chief May. Are there any board member comments or questions regarding the implementation of AB 520? Seeing none, no board member comments or questions, let's take public comment. Are there any members of the public wanting to comment on the implementation of AB 521? Thank you. Now moving on to agenda item 2B, AB 559 Berman. A brief summary for this bill can be found in the meeting materials on page 125. AB 559 would add necessary dwelling units or ADUs to the definition of home improvement in contractor state license law and specify that individuals who violate progress payment provisions causing financial harm to their customers are subject to a $10,000 fine and possible license revocation. This bill received opposition from ADU manufacturer builders concerned about how home improvement down payment restrictions may negatively impact off-site custom builds. The author decided to make this bill into a 2-year bill to see if the opposition's concerns can be alleviated before moving forward. Chief May, can you provide a brief update?
Thank you, Member Barton. So staff met with the lead opposition to AB 559, the Casita Coalition, on November 13th to discuss potential legislative ideas to deter consumer harm from the ADU industry. Some of the ideas discussed included requiring a payment and performance bond or establishing a managed fund control for ADU projects. Aside from legislative fixes, we also discussed how CSLB can improve internal processes aimed at preventing consumer harm, such as updating the ADU video, making CSLB's website more accessible,
Yeah, here's the stakeholders thought that.
from the industry.
Yes,
It seems like it's manufacturers that are the ones pushing back because it's their monies that you would be holding back based on progress, right? Again, back to the same thing, progress, payment, progress. So they're pushing back saying that they don't want to have that regulated per se. They want to have the control of it based on a contract that's being signed, not on the rules that are set for everybody based on production and progress.
in speaking to the legislators, is there maybe a decision if there's a bad actor who maybe has transgressed in previous generations of ADUs, that they would fall captive to payment bonds or door control funds as an alternative to, controlling their excessive fees along the way.
Yeah, we could bring that up. I know Chief May and I are planning maybe in February or something, meeting with legislators, and that's what we'll bring in.
I mean, you're not painting everybody with a broad brush, right? Does everybody need to be under control funds? Maybe not. Maybe they're bad actors.
Sounds good. Any other comments or questions from the board? Thank you. And any questions or comments from the? Seeing none, thank you. Now moving on to agenda item 2C, SB 291 Grayson. A brief summary of this bill can be found in the meeting materials on page 125. SB 291 was signed into law and will be effective January 1st, 2026. SB 291 increases penalties for filing a false workers' comp exemption. The bill also reinforces the legislator's prior direction for the board to identify the feasibility of establishing an exemption for workers' comp that employs an evidence-based process for determining eligibility first. This bill does not change requirements for all licensees to carry workers' comp insurance and the end of the existing exemption to workers' comp by January 1st, 2028. Staff are not asking the board to take any action on this bill today. Chief May, can you provide a brief update on how CSLB will implement SB 291?
Thank you, Member Barton. So the biggest lift towards implementing SB 291 is determining how CSLB can verify eligibility prior to authorizing an exemption and to report the board's findings to the legislature by the end of 2026. Since the passage of this bill, the Workers' Compensation Advisory Committee and subsequently the Legislative Committee have met to discuss its implementation. The Advisory Committee and the Legislative Committee considered the bill and made the following recommendations. First, hold stakeholder meetings to determine criteria for a possible exemption and prepare a draft report for the legislature to be reviewed by the board. Meet with the State Compensation Insurance Fund, the Department of Insurance, and the Department of Industrial Relations Division of Labor Standards Enforcement to better understand their exemption pre-qualifying criteria and determine if it can serve as a model for CSLB. And also, lastly, to determine the feasibility of requiring an application fee to assess initial workers' comp exemption eligibility and a renewal fee to audit and assess ongoing compliance for a workers' comp exemption. This would require staff to conduct a workload analysis to determine the application and review fee amounts. Staff will also need to promulgate regulations to reflect the new fine amounts for violations of workers' comp requirements, and will need to update the website and other materials to reflect the changes affecting applicants and licensees. Staff will continue to provide updates at future board meetings on efforts to implement this bill. Back to you, Barton.
Thank you, Chief May. Are there any board members, comments, or questions on SB 291? Seeing none, let's take public comment. Are there any members of the public wanting to comment on SB 291? Thank you. Now moving on to our last board-sponsored bill, agenda item 2D, SB 779 Archuleta. There's a brief summary for this bill can be found in the meeting materials on page 126. SB 779 would establish or increase minimum civil penalties, also known as enforcement fines on citations. This bill also increases CSLB's reserve fund cap from 6 months to 12 months. SB 779 was signed into law and will be effective January 1st, 2026. However, the increased minimum fines has delayed implementation until July 1, 2026 to coincide with the start of the fiscal year. Staff are not recommending any action
CSLB's website and other materials as needed and disseminate an industry bulletin. And lastly, SB 779 requires staff to promulgate regulations to update the minimum fine amounts already listed in regulation. Back to you, Member Barton.
Thank you, Chief Mayor. With this implementation, thanks to the frugality of our registrar folk, we'll be able to, 8 months will be acceptable and even increase that. Are there any board members like to comment or question on SB 779? All right, seeing no further board member comments, let's take public comment. Are there any members of the public wanting to comment on SB 779? And then let's move on to agenda item E3, review, discussion, and possible action on the implementation of non-sponsored bills from 2025. Brief analyses for these bills can be found in the meeting materials starting on page 127. 3 of these 4 bills are simple to implement, so I'm hopeful that we can move through this agenda item quickly. Let's start with agenda item 3A, AB 1002. AB 1002 was signed into law and is effective January 1, 2026. This bill authorizes the Attorney General in a civil action to petition the court to deny licensure or licensure renewal of any contractor or any other qualifying individual on a license for failing to pay workers a full amount of wages they are entitled under the law, not fulfilling a wage judgment, or violating an order regarding payment of wages. The bill requires the AG to notify CSLB before bringing such action and provides authorization for CSLB to intervene or collaborate with the AG in the proceedings. The bill also clarifies CSLB's sole authority to suspend, revoke, or deny licensure or licensure renewal if the AG and/or CSLB action prevails as provided. Staff are requesting no action on this bill today. Chief May, can you describe staff efforts to implement this AB 1002?
Thank you, Member Barton. To implement AB 1002, enforcement managers will ensure that key enforcement staff are aware of the new law and will update procedure manuals as needed. Also, public affairs staff will issue an industry bulletin to remind licensees to comply with wage payment requirements. Back to you, Member Barton.
Thank you, Chief May. Are there any board member comments or questions on the implementation of AB 1002? Seeing no further board member comments or questions, let's take public comment. Are there any members of the public who are wanting to comment on the implementation of AB 1002? Thank you. Let's move on to agenda item 3B, AB 1327. AB 1327 was signed into law and is effective January 1, 2026. AB 1327 requires home improvement contracts to include the contractor's email address and allow for cancellation of the home improvement contract by the buyer via email. The bill requires the home improvement contract to include a telephone number to assist the buyer in locating and filling out the notice of cancellation. The bill also provides that if the notice of cancellation is not included in or attached to the home improvement contract, the buyer may file a complaint with CSLB. Staff are requesting no action on this bill today. Chief May, can you describe staff's efforts to implement this AB 1327?
Thank you, Member Barton. To implement AB 1327, enforcement managers will notify key enforcement staff of the new home improvement contract disclosure requirements and update procedure manuals as needed. Public affairs staff will update the website and other materials to reflect changes, and PAO staff will also disseminate an industry bulletin to educate licensees about the changes. Back to you, Member Barton.
Thank you, Chief May. Are there any board member comments or questions on the implementation of AB 1327?
And one question. If the chair, if there is they don't include it in the contract and they file a complaint, would that be considered then a null and void contract if they wanted to cancel?
Requirements, and that can be grounds for disciplinary action. And the second issue is if you don't provide that information as required, you may have a difficult time pursuing any type of national restitution to the courts. So civilly, that's what how that would be addressed. If you're going to sue your customer and say that, well, there's 2 issues. One, they might have received the money, the consumer would have to go to try to recover it, but they could show that they were not afforded the right to cancel the information, and that would benefit them. Administratively, it's a violation. It could also play out in civil courts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Registrar Polk. Any other questions from the board or comments? All right, thank you. Seeing none, are there any comments or questions from the public?
Does that include the timing? Like, is it 3 days, 10 days? Should that be included in there?
That was not all with this bill, which I'm.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to agenda item 3C, SB 456. SB 456 was signed into law and will be effective January 1, 2026. Staff are requesting no action from the board on this bill today. As we discussed during the executive update earlier on the agenda, SB 456 establishes an exemption from licensure for artists who paint murals. Chief May, do you have anything to add regarding the implementation of SB 456?
Thank you, Member Barton. So in addition to finalizing and distributing the industry bulletin by the end of the year, we discussed it earlier, Public Affairs staff will update CSLB's website and other materials as needed to reflect the new exemption. Also, enforcement managers will notify enforcement staff of the new exemption and update procedure manuals as needed. Back to Member Barton.
Thank you, Chief May. Are there any board member comments or questions on the implementation of SB 456? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comment questions. Or is any members of the public wanting to comment on implementation of SB 456? Seeing none, thank you. Let's move on to agenda item 3E, SB 517. SB 517 requires contractors to disclose the names, contact information, license number, and classification of any subcontractors in a home improvement contract upon request. The bill also clarifies that the prime or direct contractor is ultimately responsible for the construction project. SB 517 was signed into law and will be effective January 1, 2026. Staff are requesting no action by the board today on this bill. Chief May, can you describe staff's efforts to implement SB 517?
Thank you, Member Barton. So SB 517 is also fairly simple to implement. Enforcement managers will make sure that key enforcement staff is aware of the new home improvement contract requirements and make updates to procedure manuals as needed. Public affairs staff will conduct consumer and industry outreach, update CSLB's website and other materials as needed, and disseminate an industry bulletin regarding the new home improvement contract requirements. Back to you, Member Barton.
Thank you, Chief May. Are there any board member comments or questions on the implementation of SB 517?
I just have a question. It has to be the request of the homeowner, actually, so it's not automatically within their contract.
It will be stated in the home improvement contract that they have the right to ask.
So maybe another, it'd be kind of like two bulletins. One bulletin for contractors with a E2 license saying, hey, you need it on request. And then another bulletin to consumers in California as they get contracts. And if they want to request to subcontractors, then they can actually request it directly with their prime. They won't know, they will never request.
Thank you, Member Warren. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, any comments or questions from the public? Seeing none. Thank you, and let's move on to agenda item 4. Review, discussion, and possible action on 2026 proposed legislation. Staff have 2 legislative proposals for your consideration today. By sponsoring these proposals, the board will authorize staff to find a legislator to carry legislation on behalf of CSLB. I'll pass this over to Chief May to describe the first proposal, agenda item 4A, related to debris removal during a declared disaster.
Thank you, Member Barton. So the first legislative proposal for the board's consideration today is related to debris removal during a declared disaster. An analysis of this proposal can be found on page 133 of the materials. Before I jump in, this proposal may sound familiar because it was included in a bill supported by CSLB last year, SB 641 FB. SB 641 would have waived certain licensing requirements for programs under the Department of Consumer Affairs during a declared federal, state, or local emergency. Unfortunately, the bill was vetoed by the governor for provisions that a C21 building/moving demolition classification. This proposal would also require licensees to have passed a CSLB hazardous substance removal certification examination and complied with HAZWOPER requirements established by the Department of Industrial Relations to perform debris removal during a declared disaster. By specifying who's authorized to perform debris removal during a declared disaster, including muck out and ash out operations, and requiring that contractors possess sufficient training and certification to conduct debris removal, worker safety is enhanced, and the risk of additional health and environmental hazards resulting from improper debris removal and disposal practices can be mitigated. This proposal does not alter existing law as it relates to debris removal on sites unrelated to a disaster declaration. Staff respectfully requests that the board consider sponsoring this proposal. Back to you, Board.
Thank you, Chief May. Are there any board member comments or questions on the debris removal proposal?
Curious to know why it was vetoed. So the bill was a lot more expansive than this one piece, and my understanding is that it was vetoed because it was overly broad in other areas. It had certain licensing waivers that would occur during a disaster, and that pertains to Department of Consumer Benefit programs under it, including CSLB. And that piece, and there was also some provisions for Department of Real Estate. I think there were issues with that as well. So my understanding from digging around is that it wasn't related to the narrow CSLB portion that we're proposing here today to run this again.
Questions from the board? Seeing none, is there a motion on this bill to support?
A second.
Second. Any discussion? Right, we have regular move second. Thank you, Katie. Would you please call for the vote?
Miguel Galarza,
Aye. We should have public comment before. we-
That's what I was gonna ask Barry.
Please.
And thank you. Really ask for public comment.
Public comment on Saturday.
Does that have anything to do with air quality control or asbestos in those situations?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you for noting.
Any board members coming?
Okay, thank you. Katie, would you please call the roll?
Miguel Galarza,
Aye.
Alan Guy, he has an excused absence. Rodney Phillips,
Aye.
Joel Barton,
Aye.
Amanda Guy, Diane Love, Jacob Lopez, has an excused absence. Michael Mark,
Aye.
Henry Nunn,
Aye.
Steve Pinelli,
Aye.
Joseph Cristiano,
Aye.
Jim Ruane,
Aye.
Thomas Reese has an excused absence. Mary Tiger, motion passes.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to agenda item 4B. I'm going to pass this over to our licensing chief, Tara Gagnon, to describe. But first, the analysis for this second proposal can be found on page 136 of the meeting materials.
Thank you, Member Barton. The second legislative proposal for the board's consideration today is related to the reissuance of a license number. Sometimes a construction company will change its corporate structure, transferring its business location to another state, merging with another entity, or changing its business type, like going from an LLC to a corporation. Typically, the business entity will want to retain the original license number to complete any active contracting jobs, and older license numbers are considered valuable in the industry because they show stability. Existing law limits when a license number can be reissued from one company to another for important consumer protection reasons. It is imperative for consumers to know exactly who they are contracting with and that the individuals behind the license and license number are accurate. However, there are ambiguities in the law related to the reissuance of a license number from one corporate entity to another, resulting in CSLB often being unable to transfer the license number. This can cause a license to be placed on suspension to expire or be unable to renew due to a change in corporate registration or status. CSLB sees this most often when a company moves their business address to another state, registers in that state for tax purposes, and then when their California Secretary of State registration ends, the license is canceled. They end up having to apply for a new license and get a new license number because the old entity no longer exists. This leads to a lot of frustration and extra work for the licensed company. Providing clarity in the law about when a license may or may not be reissued or reassigned helps protect licensees from losing long-established license numbers tied to their business reputation and ensures they can continue ongoing construction projects with an active license in good standing. Clarification will also enable staff to better assist licensees in navigating the process of making changes to their business entity. For example, what will happen when moving from domestic to foreign, or when a company buys another company and takes it over? Staff would appreciate the board's support today to pursue this statutory change. Back to you, Member Burton.
Thank you, Chief Gagnon. Are there any board member comments or questions on the proposal to clarify?
Lawyers, often they can figure this out, but the ones that don't, the newer ones, the smaller ones are calling us trying to figure out, and we're like, we're licensing staff, we're not lawyers. And it's hard for us to explain it to them. So we like to clarify it in the law so it can be clearer for them, for us, and also reduce the number who are moving to another state for tax purposes. Then suddenly they get this letter in the mail that the license is canceled because their Secretary of State is ended, and we don't want that happening to people.
So would this recommendation be to develop a proposal that we would then review prior to having to be submitted?
Yes. She would come up, well, we would come up with wording for you all to look at and be able to discuss in a future board meeting.
Super. We think that license number is one of our biggest assets.
Yes, yes, it is.
Make sure you pay attention to the things that kind of people that. So, yeah, corporate restructuring, to your point, has only changed the history of the company.
Yeah, no, I understand that's important.
Thank you, Chief Gagnon. Very short vote.
I'll give you a quick comment on that, Carol. So this came about only because of the calls that CSLB receives regarding confusion as to when a number can be reissued. And we don't want contractors to go under suspension unnecessarily. I mean, that's the problem. But also from the license service, so know Rick Pierce is there today. I know he's a little bit about it, but we intend to work with the industry and the license services just to provide clarity to the law. So you don't have someone that change their corporate status to another state, only to find they can't renew, and then they have an expired license.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other board member comments or questions? Seeing none, any comments or questions from the public?
Jamie Cohen, Contractors License Experts LLC, one of the licensing services that I just mentioned. I'm not quite sure what kind of clarification we proposed for the specific EC 707551, but I just feel like the law, the code as it currently stands does already provide for when a license would be allowed to be reissued. And then on the board's website too, it does actually specify the steps that the applicants need to take to reissue the license. So on the website currently, it says you must submit a written request for license reassignment, specifying which condition exists. For example, parent corporation has merged or created a subsidiary, or the subsidiary has merged into the parent corporation, along with an original application for a contractor license and the required fees. So as long as an applicant follows those steps and the current BPC allows for that, and they're able to show that proof, for example, with the Secretary of State, there's documentation that they have to submit to do the merger, which one is a subsidiary, which one is the parent company, et cetera. I believe that the public should be allowed to continue with that, because as Mary Tygart had mentioned, that license numbers are usually, especially older ones, are very important for the new entity that's taking over, as long as they meet the requirements, of course, and they follow the application process.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chief. No, I think that's to further codify that, right? That's what you-
Just want to clarify it.
Thank you very much for your comment. Any other comments or questions from the public? Great, seeing none, then I'll ask for a motion to support this recommendation.
Make a motion to support this recommendation.
The recommendation is to have
Staff.
let staff create language proposed and bring back to the board for potential legislation.
Second.
Second.
Any comments? Katie, would you please call the roll?
Miguel Galarza.
Aye.
Alan Gott, of their excused absence. Robbie Cobos.
Aye.
Joel Barton.
Aye.
Amanda Gaio. Diana Love. Jacob Lopez, of an excused absence. Michael Mark. Henry Nunn. Steve Pinelli.
Aye.
Joseph Cristiano.
Aye.
Jim Ruane.
Aye.
Thomas Reese, of an excused absence. Mary Piker. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. All right, and the last item on the legislative agenda item today. Agenda item 5, review, discussion, and possible action on 2026 proposed non-substantive updates to contractors state license law. Agenda items 5A through D are proposed non-substantive updates to contract. Because this bill deals with more programs than just CSLB, any proposals included should be non-controversial, minor, and no cost. The omnibus bill provides CSLB with a valuable opportunity to identify and correct errors or inconsistencies within contractors' law, therefore minimizing confusion for staff and the public and enhancing compliance among licensees and applicants. I'll now pass this over to Chief May to describe the proposed changes.
Thank you, Member Martin. The staff have identified 4 instances in contractors' law that require non-substantive or minor updates and are seeking your approval today to submit these items to the Senate Business, Professions, and Economic Development Committee for inclusion in their yearly omnibus bill. The first item, 5A, deletes an obsolete cross-reference in statute related to the installation of fire protection systems. Business and Professions Code 7026.12 provides who's authorized to install fire protection systems, and it contains a cross-reference to Business and Professions Code 7026.13. 7026.13 was repealed in 2017, so accordingly, this cross-reference should be removed to avoid confusion stemming from the citation to a code section that no longer exists. The second item, 5B, deletes a study requirement that has already been completed and submitted to the legislature. SB 465 of 2016 required CSLB to conduct a study regarding whether requiring licensees to report judgments, arbitration awards, or settlement payments resulting from claims for construction defects for rental residential units would be beneficial to consumer protection. CSLB conducted the study and reported the results to the legislature by the January 1, 2018 due date. Because this study requirement has been completed, it's in the legislature's possession, and it remains available on the board's website. It is no longer needed in statute. The third item, 5C, removes an outdated reference to collecting a rescheduling exam fee. As you likely remember, the board's sunset bill requires applicants to pay examination fees and any rescheduling fees directly to the examination provider, PSI. Accordingly, CSLB no longer collects any examination fees, and it is unnecessary to retain language in statute stating that CSLB does not charge a rescheduling fee. Lastly, the fourth item, 5D, updates the Construction Management Education Account Advisory Committee member organizations. Business and Professions Code 7139.3 lists the member organizations that participate in the advisory committee. two organizations merged, the Engineering and Utility Contractors Association and the Engineering Contractors Association, and it changed its name to the United Contractors. This amendment would simply update the list to reflect these changes, ensuring that all member organizations are accurately reflected in the law. Staff would appreciate the board's support today for including these changes in the 2026 omnibus bill. Back to you, Member Park.
Thank you, Chief May. Are there any board member comments or questions on an omnibus proposal?
Question, good chair. With regards to the last recommendation about the update, certainly to the name of the organization, but also just the number of members. Does that board, it says here that the board will recommend any coordinating to the boards. Are there any concerns with related to an even number, for example, of organizations that they recommendation they're split five to five about any recommendations in that regard, or?
I don't know if that's a concern, that there's voting that takes place that doesn't add up. I think that would be a more substantive.
There's currently only 10
Yeah.
because this association merged. So we've been dealing with 10 for however long, whenever that merger occurred.
Yeah.
And I think we have encountered, it's a fantastic point, I think we have encountered splits. But there's 10 right now, and it's proposal, it would be substantive to suggest another association be added or another one be deleted. So we just cleared it up in the law, so it's the one association that's been changed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board member comments or questions? Will we call for the vote? Any members of the public would like to comment on the proposal? Seeing none, would I have a motion to propose the omnibus proposal approval? Second. Second, remove second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Katie, would you please do the roll call for the vote?
Again, we should probably ask for public comment.
Oh, after the, okay.
You did.
Yeah, that's okay. After proper, thank you for that.
If anyone has a comment on the motion.
Yeah, thank you.
Should be fine.
All right, seeing that, would you please roll call the vote?
Miguel Galarza.
Aye.
Alan Guy, with an excused absence. Ron Phillips.
Aye.
Joel Barton. Amanda Guile. Diana Love. Jacob Lopez, with an excused absence. Michael Moore.
Aye.
Henry Nunn.
Aye.
Steve Finelli.
No.
Joseph Preciado.
Aye.
Jeremy Wayne.
Aye.
Thomas Reeves, with an excused absence. Mary Tiger. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. And this concludes the legislative items today. I'd like to thank Chief May for not giving me too many words to trip up on. And thank you for your adherence and attention to this proposal. So back to you, Everyone.
Thank you. And with that, I'd like to offer a 10-minute break for the board. The board members tonight. All right. With that, let's go ahead and move on to item F, which is enforcement, beginning on page 151 of your packet. Enforcement will be, turning it over to Chair Michael Mark. Michael?
All right, thank you, Chair Galarza. The first item on the enforcement agenda is the enforcement program statistical update. It begins on page 151 of your packet and includes a thorough statistical update. However, at this time, I request Enforcement Chair Steve Grove to provide a few highlights.
Thank you, Enforcement Chair Mark. I have 3 highlights I would like to share this afternoon, beginning at the middle of page 151 of the packet. First highlight is titled Solar Installation Complaint Results in $32,000 settlement. A staff services analyst, SSA, successfully mediated a complaint involving a San Diego consumer who had entered into a power purchase agreement and contract for the installation of solar panels, inverters, and a battery system. The complaint centered on workmanship deficiencies, specifically roof damage sustained during installation, and allegations of misrepresentation regarding the system's energy offset capabilities. The consumer reported substantial water damage to the property and unexpectedly high utility bills as the installed system offset only 77% of their energy usage, contrary to the 100% offset that had been promised. The SSA facilitated a resolution that included the termination of the power purchase agreement and a settlement payment of $32,000 to the consumer to address the property damage. The next highlight is titled Church Construction Project Failure in Paradise, and it's located near the top of page 152. On January 8, 2020, a church representative in Paradise entered into a $318,900 contract with licensed contractor Design Horizons LLC for the construction of a Q cabin kit fourplex intended to support recovery efforts following the 2018 Camp Fire. In case you are not familiar with the Q cabin kits, they are marketed as sustainable disaster resistant structures. A second contract for an additional fourplex was signed on July 29, 2020 for $430,112, bringing the total to $749,012. Subsequent change orders and development costs increased the total contract price to $1,039,968. The complainant paid $744,957 toward the project. Construction began in September 2021, but ceased in February 2023, with over 20 contracted items left incomplete. A corrected contractor later determined that the work performed failed to meet industry standards and did not conform to the approved plans. The estimated cost to correct and complete the project was $700,000, resulting in a $404,989 financial injury. The church also suffered significant operational impacts. Originally, the rental income from the units, estimated at $40,000 annually, was intended to fund a new pastor following the retirement of the current one. After the Camp Fire, the church shifted its focus to housing fire survivors. However, due to the project's failure, the church was left without usable units or rental income. On April 25th, 2023, the church filed a complaint with CSLB. The investigation found sufficient grounds to pursue disciplinary action, and an accusation was filed seeking license revocation. The contractor entered into a stipulated settlement agreement, resulting in license revocation effective August 25th, 2025. Under the terms of the settlement, the contractor is prohibited from applying for license reinstatement for 3 years and was ordered to pay $21,577 in investigative costs and resolve $404,989 in restitution before being eligible for reinstatement. The last highlight I would like to share is at the bottom of page 152 and is titled Responsible Managing Officer Held Responsible. In November 2022, homeowners entered into a $156,846 contract with a licensed swimming pool contractor for the construction of a pool and spa in Calistoga. Subsequent change orders were proposed, totaling an additional $117,585. Despite the license being suspended on September 29, 2023, the company's chief executive officer, or CEO, requested and received a payment of $31,369 on October 17, 2023, without performing any work or delivering any materials. The homeowners ultimately terminated the contract. During the investigation, the CEO admitted to diverting the funds for unrelated purposes, while the responsible managing officer denied any knowledge of or involvement in the project. On July 29, 2024, the investigation was completed and the case was referred to accusation seeking license revocation for multiple business and professions code violations, including failure to exercise direct supervision and control of construction operations, diversion or misapplication of funds, willful or fraudulent conduct causing harm, contracting under a suspended license, and requesting or accepting payment in excess of the value of work performed or materials provided. On July 25th, 2025, the registrar adopted a default decision revoking both the contractor license and the CEO's home improvement salesperson registration, effective August 25th, 2025. To address the criminal violations, the case was also referred to the Napa County District Attorney's Office, and an arrest warrant has been issued for the CEO. There's a typo in the packet that mentions that the arrest warrant was for the RO. It was actually for the CEO. This is another great example of our staff's commitment to work with local prosecutors to address criminal acts. And this concludes my highlight, and now turn it back to the meeting.
Great job, Steve. Continuing on with the statistical update, you turn back to page 151. At the top of the page, out of a total of 228 positions within the enforcement division, there were 25 currently vacant positions at the time of this packet. 3 vacancies have since been filled, including the supervising special investigator 1 position. The recruitment process is underway to fill all the remaining vacancies, and interviews have already been conducted for 7 of the vacant positions. To talk about page 156, you will find complaint statistics for the period of January 1st, 2025 through October 31st, 2025. A total of 16,892 complaints have been initiated, while with current staffing levels. The optimum maximum enforcement division caseload is 4,895 pending complaints. But as of October 31st, 25, the pending caseload was 5,484. Staff services and analysts assigned to the 2 CSLB intake mediation centers have done a remarkable job of mediating consumer complaints. From January 1st, 2025 to October 31st, 2025, staff's efforts have resulted in $26.5 million in restitution to financially injured parties. Another board goal is approximately dispose all but 100 complaints within 270 days of receipt. As of October 31st, 2025, 196 complaints exceed the 270-day range. Enforcement supervisors continue to work closely with their staff and provide guidance during regular case strategy, discussions, and monthly case reviews in an effort to reduce the backload of age cases. At the bottom of page 156, you will find information regarding CSLB sponsored arbitration and disciplinary action statistics. More than $2.7 million in restitution have been ordered to injured parties as a result of complaints being referred to the CSLB arbitration. Next, I will provide a brief update on the proactive enforcement, which is conducted by the 27 special investigators assigned to the statewide investigative fraud team, better known as SWIFT. The information begins at the bottom of page 153 of your packet. And we're jumping back and forth. But from January first, 2025 to October 31st, 2025, SWIFT conducted 26 undercover sting operations across the state, participated in 352 sweep days, and responded to 524 leads. These tips received from industry and the public helped investigators close 2,252 cases as a result of the operations, with 664 cases resulting in administrative or criminal legal action. Additionally, 891 advisory notices were issued for relatively minor violations. The number of sting operations conducted during this reporting period is considerably lower than usual due to the fact that the SWIFT staff spent a considerable amount of their time assigned to discuss this disaster recovery center supporting survivors of the Southern California wildfires in Pasadena and Los Angeles between January and April. And lastly, when you go to page 159, you will see that the Enforcement Division's Experienced Verification Unit has conducted 378 application investigations during the period of January 1st, 2025 to October 31st, 2025. Of that total, 187 were verified or approved. 73 of these applications were withdrawn and 114 were denied. 4 of the denials are being appealed. Enforcement targets approach to application and investigations is effective and is demonstrated by more than 50% not approved. This concludes the enforcement program's statistical update. This is the information only item only, no action is required of the board. Is there any board comments? Is there any public comments? I will say, as enforcement chair, one of the things that's really cool is that earlier in registered votes report, he stated there's only 25 complaints and the fires below. So we have kind of like a tale of two fires, unfortunately, and our staff being so proactive down south has really helped make sure that the unlicensed contractors are not doing any work in those wildfire zones. You know, we took a tour down there maybe a year ago, 3 board meetings ago, and we really saw how that disaster recovery centers really help the consumers understand do not hire like unlicensed contractors. And with that is it. Back to the chair.
With that, we'll move on to item number 2, which is licensing. And with that, we go to Henry III, provide a briefing on the licensing update. Henry.
Thank you, Chair Gonzaga. So I'm giving the 2025 update. I'm the chair of the 2026 licensing committee. I'm providing the licensing and testing division today with the assistance from licensing chief Rebecca. The licensing section begins on page 161 of the board packet. So for the licensing and testing program update agenda, item G1, please turn to page 163 in your packet. Regarding applications, the table on page 165 indicates the number of applications received for new licenses, additional classifications, replacing qualifiers, and home improvement salespersons. As you can see, CSLB received over 12,000 applications in the last quarter, which covers July through October. Almost 5,000 of these applications were for new licenses. 900 were to replace the qualifier on a corporate or LLC license, and a little over 2,000 were from new home improvement salespersons being added to a license. On page 166, you can see that all of our processing times are still closed, so 2 or under 3 weeks. Staff put in the hard work to process applications, renewals, and other documents each week, and are proud of the processing times posted on the website. Proud of stuff. Moving to page 168, CSLB received over 29,000 renewal applications in the last quarter. In addition, staff report that close to 90 contractors were survivors of the LA fires took advantage of the governor's executive order to defer the renewal the renewal fees for a year. Staff began contacting them the first week in December with instructions on how to pay for the deferred fees. Page 171 summarizes the work of the judgments unit. Almost 30 million more were recovered to state agencies in the public calendar year 2024 than the year before. Staff are up to date processing judgments, outstanding liabilities, and bond payments of claims. I'll now turn it over to Chief Kara Gagnon for the testing update.
Thank you, Henry. Good afternoon. For the testing update, please turn to page 175 of your board packet. As seen in the table on page 175, CSLB had a record-breaking year with over 59,000 exams being administered to candidates between November 2024 and October 2025. 87 of those exams were taken in the Wilsonville, Oregon Test Center, and 181 were administered in out-of-state test centers. As indicated on page 177, the Exam Development Unit released 2 updated exams between July and October 2025, the C5 Framing and Rough Carpentry and the C35 Lab and Classroom. In addition, 6 more item banks are complete and being programmed at PSI for a new release date. The Exam Development Unit has 9 additional exams that are currently undergoing the exam development process. EDU has also received the new Title 24 California Building Codes and will be updating all the code-based item banks by January 2026. They are 60% complete as of 2 weeks ago and working on them on a regular basis to bring them all up to speed by the end of January 2026. As mentioned on page 177, staff are continuing to work with our engineering students and PSI test vendor to digitize the booklets for the exams. Currently, all of CSLB's exams, except for the law and business, require a booklet of blueprints, charts, graphs, and other materials, which many of you contractors probably had to have when you were taking your test. And these are used to answer some of the questions on the exam. These are laminated books that are kept at the test centers in secure storage and used just for CSLB trade exams. Staff are in the process of digitizing these booklet images so they can be stored in PSI's computers and used on screen by the candidates. So they can just pop up the picture. Each new image is being pre-tested as it is developed. The C15 flooring and floor covering and the C55 water conditioning exams are both completely digitized and have been released at DCA approved PSI test centers nationwide. So you can now take those 2 exams and your law and business at any DCA approved test center anywhere in our country instead of having to come to California or Wilsonville to take your test. 19 other trades are currently in development and pre-testing for digitized and embedded graphics and embedding these exams. Over time, this is going to save CSLB money on laminating and shipping booklets, and it's going to increase our exam security, not to mention being able to move our exams nationwide. The Spanish exam update begins on page 178. This is part of CSLB's ongoing efforts to reduce language barriers for applicants and licensees, part of licensing strategic plan item 1.1. Between August 2024 and July 2025, over 11,000 Spanish exams were taken by CSLB candidates. Frequently repeated are law and business in B general building. And after that, the most common Spanish exams are for the C33 painting and decorating and the C39 roofing trades. CSLB's IT staff are programming a means by which technicians can enter the candidate's language preference when they enter the application data. This programming should be completed by February 2026 and will allow other letters to be translated into Spanish and sent to candidates who are more comfortable using that language. So they can receive letters from CSLB in the language that they're comfortable with instead of getting it in English and having to ask somebody to help them out with it. And I'm going to turn it back to Henry to ask for comments.
Thank you for the update, Chief Carroll. Are there any comments from the board?
I have a comment on the Spanish.
Yes.
Is electrical also available?
It is not. When we first looked at it, the top 10 electrical was like number 11 or 12.
Okay,
So it's not been translated yet.
but it's in works.
It's not on the works yet because they only have one exam specialist who can read and write in Spanish. And so if I could get another one, we could translate 10 more exams. But until I do, we just have him who is absolutely wonderful. We are very grateful for. But he's the only one that can work in those exams, create versions, etc. And 10 is an awful lot for one person.
Yeah. I just curious if I.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Just a quick question. And I understand probably a lot of the problems with Spanish language is, the writing and interpretation and slang or whatever. It's
Yeah.
probably hard to just know which words to use.
Yeah, and so what we did with the exams is we had them translated by a professional company. We didn't know when we did that they translated it into European Spanish, and we got them back and we're like, uh-oh. And again, fortunately, we have this person in exams who's looking at it going, this isn't what we use here in California, and so they are going through the process in all 10 of those current item banks of retranslating it to make sure that the words are Latin American Spanish, which is what we use here in California most often. And then with the letters, we're doing the same thing. We've added instructions to fill out your application, instruction for your waiver application. We've added those to the website, and we've had our own in-house certified bilingual staff do that. So that again, it's more understandable for people. The whole point is to reduce barriers to licensure, not make it more complicated. Yeah.
And I might add, we, several months ago, I had a chance to recognize that group at CSLB. And they told me that the great work they were doing. And what's really cool was the fact that they could talk different phrases. I said, well, I don't know that phrase in Spanish, but I know it in English.
Yeah.
And so they're able to talk in three things. So hammer means hammer. You know, and so it makes it easier for you to pass with that.
Yeah.
So I thought that was fantastic. They're doing a great job with a great team.
Yeah, they are a great team. Thank you.
Like, good, that's probably a good point because, there's some items there's probably not a Spanish word for it, so they could tend to be between.
Any other comments? I appreciate that. I mean, it's obviously important. I don't know if this is unique to California, and other groups that have similar scenarios in other states.
Other states have also mentioned it when I talked to them and asked them. Other states have different languages that they have to deal with. French is much more common up in the Northeast and stuff. But same thing, we all want to be able to reach more of our population and more of our candidates.
Yeah, I think it really addresses the barrier of the entry conversation.
Yeah.
So appreciate the work.
So still maybe one question, because I don't know if it makes any sense, but does something like an AI tool, ChatGPT or Claude or something, could they at least do a first pass at stuff, and then we might be able to leverage time by looking or viewing instead of developing translations?
We have looked into that and using that for the initial translation. CSLB is under DCA, which has very strict controls on what access we have to AI because we don't want AI accessing our materials and sharing it with others. So they're still working the bugs out and sort of deciding exactly what and when and where and how we can translate that. Once we do have it translated, like in this case, we had someone else translate it for us and then we have staff work on it. Because the exams are ongoing things, it's not just translated and done. Someone has to read each version, someone has to peer review it, someone has to check it at the test center. That's why I need the Spanish-speaking, Spanish bilingual employees.
Well, the employees for sure, but I'm thinking what the work they do is, could it be, to your point on not having able to cover as much ground on how many exams you have, so could we translate more exams with the same personnel? If the first pass got done by AI, and then they were reviewing and editing as opposed to having to do all the work, could we get more exams covered?
I'm not sure about that, and the reason is because we already have put them out. He didn't translate them himself, but the working on them every day, the meeting with SMEs, because you're fortunate in California, have many bilingual SMEs are willing to come in as subject matter experts and work on it. So having those workshops, that kind of thing, that's where his burden comes in doing the work. And 10 exams is a lot for one person. So that's part of our dilemma. But it's something we keep pulling in the back of our mind of, gosh, we wish we could do more. At the moment, we're kind of stopped, but it doesn't mean we won't consider it in the future, especially for electrical and those others that were right there on the list. Well, yeah.
That's a great question, actually, and everyone's using AI, and there are barriers, but I think it's important to stay on point to make sure that we're going down that path to at least investigate and make sure that we can. Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, so it's a great licensing.
Yeah. Any other comments from the board? Are there any public comments? Thank you. We'll move on.
That one was.
Oh, that one's good. That means too.
It's like you're
So next we'll, get to we get our Senate issue figured out. CNA grants for 2026, so please, turn to page 179. Item B2, at the end of each year, staff requests a board review to potentially approve grant awards for the construction management and education account. Okay, thank you. So as seen on page 182 this year, the board requested and received approval from the Department of Consumer Affairs to increase disbursement authority from $100,000 to $250,000 in fiscal year 2026-27. This will provide for additional funding for institutions that offer construction management education. This is done each year based on the amount of funds in the account. This year, 5 colleges submitted grant applications, and $225,000 is distributed among 5 public colleges selected by the Construction Management Education Advisory Committee. The members of the committee are listed on page 181. Revenues in the account are from voluntary contributions made by licensees at the time of a license renewal fee payment and are sufficient to support this request. That concludes that. And I want to know if there's any comments by the board.
Thank you. With that, we'll go on to item number H, which begins on page 193.
How was it? Oh, wait, so was this?
Voting.
Yeah.
So it's on another.
No, so I was want to make sure there are no comments from the board. None. Any comments from the public?
Okay.
So now there is voting, and that's leave it at this one. So direct staff to distribute the 2026 CMA grant awards to identified colleges according to the staff recommendation on page 160. Based on approval from the Department of Finance to expend $255,000 from the CNA account. And that's on page 182, right?
I'll make a motion to provide grants to these 5 CSU colleges, Chico, Sacramento, Thread, Beach, and San Luis Obispo program.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any more comments from the board? Or the public? All right. Eddie, can you take the vote?
Miguel Galarza.
Aye.
Alan Guy has been deceased applicants. Rodney Phobos. Joel Barton.
Aye.
Amanda Gallo. Diana Love. Jacob Lopez has been deceased absent. Michael Mark.
Aye.
Henry Nutt.
Aye.
Steve Pinelli.
Yes.
Joseph Preciado.
Aye.
Jerry Marine.
Aye.
Thomas Ruiz has been deceased absent. Mary Piker. Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, next, item 3, survey of B2 residential remodeling contractors for the chief results. The next item on the agenda, item G3, starts from page 183 of the board packet. The B2 residential remodeling trade was created to address 2 issues. First, some applicants applying for the B general building trade were rejected because they had no structural or framing experience. Second, unlicensed handy persons were doing jobs consisting of multiple unrelated trades like painting, changing plumbing fixtures, cabinets, and bathroom. This multi-trade experience will not qualify the applicant for a B license because of the lack of structural or framing experience, and 4 years of German level or above experience would be needed to apply for the individual specialty classifications. The B2 license allows licensees to work in 3 or more unrelated trades outside of the wall and does not require structural or framing experience. The B2 residential remodeling trade was first released in August 2021. As seen on page 185, the trade description was written to specifically exclude any structural or behind the wall work and to cover the work of a handy person who worked in multiple trades. The B general building trade, however, qualifies licensed holders to build homes, commercial buildings, and other structural buildings.
Because of the work they do, they must have some structural experience as part of their contracting activity in order to qualify for the license and sit for the exam. The B2 trade was first advertised in April 2021. It was advertised as a pathway to licensure for those who had some journey level trade experience in a variety of trades but could not qualify for the B license because they did not have framing or rough carpentry experience. The dilemma is that a person who is licensed as a B2 contractor is specifically excluded from doing the structural or framing work that will allow them to gain experience necessary to add a B general building classification to their license. Since August 2021, over 1,300 people have been qualified for the B2 classification. 74 of them have a B classification on their license as well. During the November licensing committee meeting, Chief Gagnon explained the issues with the B2 residential remodeling licenses trying to qualify for a B general trade, building trade. Staff proposes conducting a survey of the active licensed B2 contractors to determine why they choose B2 as a trade and if their career goals is to retain the B general classification, building classification. The wording for the survey question starts on page 186 of the board packet. The survey would take about 6 weeks to complete, one for staff to build it, 4 to have open for responses to get it, to get enough replies, and 1 to calculate the results. Staff should have results ready for the March 2026 board meeting so the board can discuss their options then. If the survey results indicate that licensees did intend to gain experience for a B license, then the board will just need to decide how best to respond. Nevada's solution is to offer a restricted license, the B7, that will give candidates a limited license if they meet certain requirements and allow them to gain the experience on smaller jobs with that license, with the goal that they can qualify and apply for a full general contractor's license after 2 years. If CSLB's survey's results show that a number of B2 contractors would like a pathway to add a B classification, staff proposes the following option. Create a new certification that would allow B2 licenses to gain experience with the B license in a way that protects the public. The new certification would allow certification holders to build garages, sheds, pergolas, patio covers, and other structural work, but not houses, ADUs, or home additions. The certification will require taking and passing a new exam that will cover the scope of the certification. Because these would be licensed contractors adding the certification, they would already have the $25,000 contractor's bond, be fingerprinted, have taken the law and business exam, and meet their licensing requirements. The item the board is voting on now is to give staff approval to conduct the survey of B2 contractors. That's that. So now, are there any comments from the board?
Yes, well, 2 things.
Yeah.
One is I'm all for the survey, so that, but we're kind of making it where it doesn't make sense for them to get any experience because we're holding them to sheds and stuff that doesn't really get looked at. Doesn't get inspected, doesn't get checked. So you're building something that you don't know if they're doing a good job or not. So what experience are they getting? How are we making sure they're actually getting the experience that they need? So, I understand by holding it to where they can't, I get the reason why. I understand that, don't get me wrong, but what are we checking? You can build a shed, I can build a shed. And nobody's coming out to look at it if it's under 200 square feet, so, or 100 square feet, doesn't matter. So who's looking at it? So this person that's doing this work, an apprentice, at least somebody's looking at that work, they have a journey person looking at that work, or they have an inspector that's looking at that work, telling them they're doing it right or wrong. Or school is telling them they're doing it right or wrong. Now we have somebody that's building a shed. Nobody's looking at it. We don't know what's happening. So what experience are they getting? How do we qualify it? Oh, they've had this B2 license for 4 years, and we're gonna say, oh, now you qualify to get a B license after the fact, and nobody's inspected anything. Nobody's checked anything. I'm all for the survey. I get it. I'm just, because I read everything that's in here, and when you read in this first paragraph, I just want to say this one thing. It's here. Second, unforeseen handy person for doing jobs consistent of multiple unrelated trades. like changing plumbing fixtures, cabinets, bathrooms, and painting walls, yada, yada. When we get to the B2 here, we're saying that number 3, residential remodeling contractor shall not contract to install, replace, substantially alter, or extend electrical, mechanical, or plumbing systems or their component parts. But we're saying that that's what they're doing already, but now we're telling them that they can get a B2 license, but still can't do it. What are we doing?
Allowed to change fixtures.
Well, no, they can't. Component parts, plumbing fixtures are part of the component parts. They can't change fixtures. Part of the plumbing system. You're saying you can't do it as part of the plumbing system. That's my question is, we're saying one thing, we're saying that you can't do this. We're saying that they do it already, and we're giving them a way to actually do it, but then we're saying that you can't do it.
Don't have a description before me to help you.
I'm just reading what it says. But that's what I'm reading, what it says here.
So it sounds like that if we consider the certification, if the survey results show that there's a need for it, then we're gonna have to work a lot on the language to get it right.
Because I just
And
want,
that's important.
I just really want to make it work. I want them to get the license, and I do actually want to see them do this work and have it looked at. I don't have a problem with their doing up to a certain amount. I think additions or stuff like that to a certain degree, if it's within a threshold, like, hey, we're adding on to a room or something like that, it's a certain, that could get looked at, something that could get checked. Because if you're asking for verification, seeing somebody's license and going on to what I did, $100,000 worth of work in San Francisco over the last 3 years, and you look at the permit history and say, every single time you've had an inspection, we can see correction. It's multiple corrections, and it takes you 6 months to build, one wall. That's a problem. It's probably not going to qualify for it.
Yeah.
But right now, hey, I built 500 sheds. Yeah, how were they built? Great, everybody loved it.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. That's how.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just trying to figure that out.
It's important.
Yeah. But I'm in for the survey.
So we want to make sure that we're validating the work and that what we're approving is actually gonna make sure that someone can actually qualify, so. Okay, are there any other comments from the board?
Go ahead. What I was gonna comment on is, to Steve Nelly's point, from my understanding, any like mechanical work, any work behind the walls, a B2 cannot do. You need to hire the licensed subcontractor. And then if a permit is like needed for, let's say, plumbing repair, they obviously have to make sure to hire a licensed contractor too for that subclass. So just make sure I'm clarifying,
Unless they do the 3 trades.
I thought I was actually, you always had to hire a specialty sub for those particular classifications, right?
Yeah, it was set up, if the board wanted this, it's work that's outside of the law.
Yes.
It's not anything, it wasn't, a permit wouldn't be required, I mean, it would be for the handy person that's coming in doing some painting, maybe changing your faucets, I know we can discuss that.
That's what.
But it's just some minor work.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
And what we've heard is that some of those that apply for the B2 are looking for a pathway to the full B. We don't know if that's true or not. And that's why we want to survey the B2s, just to find out what the universe is and see if we need, the board should look at it again. But that's all that's really important.
And define, if let's say they do, then try to figure out some sort of pathway.
That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would bring it back to the board. So address your concern, especially what Steve brought up, very, very important.
Member Mark, are you asking if we should have more language in there defining that behind the wall work?
I think it's already there in the whole code. It's just, we only have a subset that it's just not in
Should
there.
probably put the whole statute in.
Yeah, the whole statute from my memory had all of that in there.
We're not finding, Steve, I don't think we're finding any complaints.
I've never seen one.
No, it's working well. What the board put out is working well. It's just that we're hearing these B2s are somewhat frustrated. They can't obtain the full D. So is it just a handful or is it a lot of them? Would the board want to take a look at it?
I think you'll get a better response.
We will certainly try to, because the survey that we propose is pretty short. It's 2 or 3 questions, so it shouldn't take very long for them to respond. as opposed to some of our other surveys, which you all have seen, which are extremely long and take an hour and a half. So this should be a pretty quick one, and I'm hoping that's going to increase our response rate. What I'll do is I'll set it up to go out to all of our licensed B2 contractors, and then also set reminders to remind them, please pop in and spend 5 minutes responding to our survey, so that hopefully we can get some pretty decent results and get a really good idea if this is even a concern of theirs or not.
One additional question. On reading through the questions, I was curious about the first one, and this is more of a logistical question. Does when a respondent goes in to take the survey, are they able to select more, or will they be able to select more than one option?
Yes.
In that first question, and then I was thinking, just kind of anticipating it for the March meeting, I would imagine that there may be some B2s that are excited about the B2 for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
So, in order for us to kind of get a comprehensive idea of what those rationales and reasons are. Anyhow, that's the point.
I agree. That was my intention too. Yeah.
Thank you.
First is yes or no, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Or one, or only one
Yeah,
option.
yeah.
You said you have, about how many B2 contractors? Or licenses?
When I looked at it, we had 1,390 licensed B2 contractors in California, which is pretty good since 2021.
Yeah.
So I'm really pleased about it.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the board? Comments from the public?
Sorry, I'm standing on my knees, they're no good. So, I have two comments. First comment is handyman doing electrical and pool repairs that are grounded. And those are really, I don't know how you control that. Second thing that I found out recently is through Arizona Home Depot, all the Home Depots are doing a certification program where they certify people within each of the trades, and then they refer them to people that come in. I don't understand why that's even be allowed.
It's not.
It shouldn't be. They should not be certifying anybody because they don't have the responsibility. And I called, and the only response I got was somebody in Arizona, but we're in California.
Right.
And it's irritating to not have the appropriate licensing for the products that they're doing, especially here.
Through the chair. Just to answer on something like that, so when they do something like that, maybe for somebody to do their self-certification, that doesn't hold any weight. So if they came and they were doing, say, heat pump water heater, they were spying with Home Depot, and they had certified her, you can go out and do it. If she can go out and do it, we find out that she went out and did it, we're gonna post the building for violation and fines for working without a license for the first point. And then if we find out that Home Depot is doing that or another company, then we actually get our city attorneys to go after that company.
I think you should look into it.
Just,
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay, so with here's a motion that I want the board to consider. Direct staff to survey the 1,300 B2 contractors to determine if they have this license as a pathway, if they got the license as a pathway to gain experience towards a B2 building license or for another reason.
make the motion.
I'll second.
Any other comments from the board? Or the public? Yeah.
Miguel Galarza.
Aye.
Alan Guy has an excused absence. Rodney Kogo. Joel Warner. Amanda Gaia. Aye. Diana Lowe. Aye. Jacob Lopez has an excused absence. Michael Mark.
Aye.
Henry Nutt. Steve Pinelli.
Aye.
Joseph Preciado.
Aye.
Jim Ruane.
Aye.
Thomas Ruiz has an excused absence. Mary Tyker. Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you. This concludes the licensing testing update.
Going on and moving on to page 193 of your packets. We're going to move on to public affairs. And we're going to turn it over to Diana Love, public affairs chair.
Thank you, Chair Delano. This is H1, Public Affairs Program Update. I will now share the Public Affairs Update starting on page 193. The Public Affairs Office, or PAO, is responsible for media, industry, licensing, and consumer communications, as well as outreach. They provide proactive public relations, respond to media inquiries, and develop and distribute publications and newsletters. PAO creates content for CSLB social media channels and website, including webcasts and videos. PAO continues to provide outreach and support to those affected by the devastating wildfires that swept through Southern California in January, and makes regular posts on social media about rebuilding to help survivors. On Saturday, September 13th, Information Officer Natalie Rosenberg participated in a virtual disaster recovery workshop with Los Angeles County Public Works called Rebuilding with a Licensed Contractor. During the workshop, CSLB provided tips for choosing the right contractor, including ensuring the contractor follows home improvement contract rules regarding payment restrictions. Registered Folk also presented at a virtual rebuilding summit for Eden and Palisades survivors on Saturday, November 15th, as part of a panel sharing key consumer protection guidance for the rebuilding, including how to verify license and core contract requirements. CSLB also maintains a toll-free disaster hotline Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Recent calls have included questions about postponing renewal payments. On page 194, you'll see the videos produced by PAO through the end of October. This does not include the what you should know more before building an ADU video that was shared during the Public Affairs Committee meeting last month. On page 195 details how PAO is increasing CSLB's following on social media. CSLB maintains an active presence on Facebook, Instagram, X, and LinkedIn. The most popular post on Facebook was posted in October and had information about the requirement for consumers to hire licensed contractors for projects that need permits or cost more than $1,000. PAO also responded to 12 media inquiries between August and the end of October. Beginning on page 199, you'll find the outreach events CSLB attended between August and October. Join events around the state, including the Senior Scam Stopper in October, in which Chair Galazer presented with Assemblymember Alex Lee's office. Following that is a list of the publications and reports CSLB completed between August and October. This includes how CSLB protects the public in disaster areas, the California Licensed Contractors newsletter, and the What is a Stop Order, a guide for consumers, is in English and Spanish. The Public Affairs Office also writes and publishes content for internal communications with the intranet articles between August and October listed on page 201. These include recognition of CSLB staff for various achievements and moral building events like the pumpkin decorating contest and chili cook-off, among others. On page 202, you'll see that CSLB's Public Information Center has maintained wait times to exceed the board's goal of 6 minutes. This is an informational item and no action is required of the board. Are there any board comments?
Yeah, I have one comment. I just want to say that, you know, with all the hard work that the staff does and complaints and living with lots of unhappy people at times, right? Talking about the fun stuff is important. Recognizing it and acknowledging it may sound silly, whatever, but I think it's important to recognize that when you're dealing with negativity, unhappy people all the time, it's an important factor of well-being. And being able to acknowledge that is important. So I just wanted to just make that point.
Thank you. Any other board comments? And before I go to the public, I had the opportunity of presenting the certificate to the office for Valencia, and they were minions for the Halloween costume. I hope you get an opportunity to see the picture that registered folk put out, that they were very colorful and very united. So they were very excited that they received the award. So just wanted to put that there for all of you as well. Any comments from the public? Anyone online? Oh, and Joseph judged the pumpkin contest. No.
That's right. To Member Nutt's comment, you can see, you definitely, the level of camaraderie and also just the creativity and connectivity that the staff had, certainly at the Sacramento office, was palpable, and it's great to see folks out there.
I hope I get an opportunity to do the taste the chili and do that. We have a champion. Who's that, Katie?
Yeah.
So on to the next item, which is H2, review and discussion regarding information available for justice involved individuals. I have an update on information CSLB is making available for the justice involved individuals, which you'll find on page 205. The item was discussed at the Public Affairs Committee meeting on November 17, 2025. Justice involved individuals refers to people who have had interactions with the criminal justice systems as a defendant. This item looks at how CSLB can assist these individuals seeking employment once their sentence has been completed, but before they are eligible to apply for licensure. Justice involved individuals can work toward getting the required work experience to eventually apply for licensure once eligible. CSLB staff will look at an applicant's consistent work history after release. There are a variety of pre-apprenticeship programs that both board and committee members have noted at past meetings. We appreciate the board's input on providing these resources. Public Affairs has posted links to these organizations on CSLB's website under the important links page with a new header noting justice involved individuals information. There are 13 total links included. Among these are the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation Career Technical Education, California Prison Industry Authority, California Department of Industrial Relations Division of Apprenticeship Standards, State Building and Construction Trades Pre-Apprenticeships Programs, Second Call, Second Chance Program, Laborers Training and Retraining Trust, Southern California, Fair Chance Hiring Initiative, Freedom Through Education, Anti-Recidivism Coalition, and Center for Employment Opportunities. And that's a mouthful. Since this is an informational item, no action is required of the board. Are there any board comments? Any comments from the public or online? Okay. This concludes the public affairs. And before I turn it back over to the chair, I just wanted, Dave, did you want to say anything about the conversation that you and I have discussed, or we bring that to another time?
Yeah, what we've done and I've discussed is whether or not are we being as transparent as we should be for those that have been incarcerated and getting released? And what are the opportunities for them to obtain licensure? Some are perhaps older and they won't be able to work as like a laborer or for someone as an employee. And so I think that deserves a future subsequent conversation. I think we need to have a meeting on that to see what's on our website. We make judgment calls all the time at CSLB, and there are some crimes or criminal convictions that as a registrar, I've not been comfortable approving somebody for licensure. Now, that doesn't mean what I will do in those situations is I'll ask an administrative law judge, hear the case. And that gives the opportunity for the individual to bring in letters from the community, from other sources, the parole officer, and the administrative law judge can make a determination as to whether they're suitable for licensure. But I think talking to Diana, I think we can revisit that. We take a look at what we have out there and see what opportunities there would be for someone that has been incarcerated. And I know this board member law does have some examples that are quite interesting where someone has done something as a teenager or 19, 20 years of age, and now it's 30 years later, and they've been a model, in prison. And to what extent can they regain licensure, and what would be the time frame?
Some of the things I discussed with the registrars, that some of the people who have been in prison when they're coming out, they're in their 60s and older. And now we're talking about them doing apprentice program and 4 or 5 years, which is going to make them even older. And what kind of life expectancy do we have for them to hold down a job? So that was something part of the conversation.
And that makes it sound like the B2 license might be something that would work in that situation for starting. To start it, right? That would give them the opportunity to have that as a starting thing, and then move to, a couple of years with that, and then moves on beyond that. If they need to, at least they can start to sustain with some kind of work, at least having something washed and licensed. That's not a bigger grand scheme license instead.
Yeah, and also we look at, trades. Some trades are different than others, and there's different crimes, and what will the community accept, what will they not accept? I would just say the general rule, when I'm looking at an applicant that has a criminal conviction, it's unlikely that it would be approved if they're still on probation or parole. And that's just something we kind of take a look at.
And this, sitting here thinking, this is something that's probably, as most of you here are contractors, and I know you have that contracting mind that you're strict about what you do and what people can and cannot do. But I'm just wondering, is it possible to have any kind of a program inside a prison system where there is some form of some type of an apprentice program where they can do things within the prison to qualify for time?
Actually, that exists.
That does exist already?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if there's I know that it exists. I'm not sure what the connections are in regards to someone is tracing or tracking the progress that can say this person's at this stage when they're ready to enter back into society. I'm not sure how that pans out.
So one thing I'd say is that CTE that's referenced in the materials, we've done a ton of work on that. So folks can get out of prison already with having completed all of their pre-finished requirements. So they work in CCT, or there's a bunch of groups that do that. The laborers I know are super involved because we've worked with them, and I'm assuming many of the other trades have also. So I think for me, getting folks that have all, and they'll come out with all their certifications and so forth. So a bunch of the work to be done is how do you get people who have that into a place where they can actually have a job in the kind of industry that we have, where there's plenty of work to do. All of them are totally eligible and sometimes amazing at working on highways and streets and stuff. They might not work on schools and churches, but they're going to be on highways, no problem. The challenge is really that it's also seasonal work and stuff like that. And sometimes they need income right away, and there's a lot of other things. But I feel like we have to keep working on how do you actually get a job in here. And then licensure is cool, but also thing one is how do you actually get a job in construction?
Yeah.
Because if we can make those connections between prison and law folks coming out, which there's a bunch of interest in CBCR in doing that. And there's a bunch of actually really good channels that they've done with firefighters. So there's no reason we can't do that with construction. So if we can keep finding ways to find their way into trades and construction, I feel like that's a broken path right now. And then once they have the experience, I feel like licensure, making sure they're eligible is a good idea. But I don't know, if those of you that are in the trades would agree with me, but getting them actual jobs when they get out is a big one to me.
Yeah, I think that's more realistic in regards to coming out and getting indoctrinated into a trade versus coming in and thinking you're gonna business. It's a big reach. It's novel, but it's practical. So those folks need employment pretty fast. So I think that's more practical pathway.
The piece I appreciate is that there wouldn't be a barrier when they get there. Like if they get out, work for a few years, figure out some background, that wouldn't prevent them from getting a license. To Dave's point about just because they have that background But I feel like it's a little further down the region.
I think a few of them with the United Association, at least Rodney knows as well, is a lot, like, I mean, does come with age, does happen when, somebody's 65 years old, they're not gonna go to a apprenticeship program for 4 years and then, turn out and retire at the same time, but I think that there's a lot that are younger, 30s and 40s, that will take classes in prison, what they're doing, in like plumbing or electrical, whatever, they go through that apprenticeship program. And then when they come out, they can go to those apprenticeship programs and say, look, I've done this, I've done that, and there's testings available and actual seeing the physical work they can do. And instead of starting out at the beginning, apprentice level, they can move up to a higher levels where they're almost to that point of where they're turning out and becoming a trained person, and they also get into the workforce. So they're working for somebody that actually has the license. So that them having to get the license might not be a requirement. That's in California. Outside of California, it's a different story, but in California, having that license is a requirement for them as long as they're working for somebody that has a license, they're employed by them. So there is a way to get into that realm of the apprenticeship programs, the locals and stuff like that. It's
So this is happening right now, at 50%. Like, for example, in San Joaquin County, in the jail specifically, the San Joaquin Building Trades is doing MC3 in the jail. They're teaching it. One of the graduates just became a first-year female apprentice working for Tiger and part of OB3. So it's very possible, and it's happening. So it's pretty happening right now. I think one of the things we were saying is, unfortunately, construction is strenuous work, and you have to be. Let's say the average age of apprentice is 34 right now. You're just higher than usual, right? For most areas. But in the end, MC3 is being taught in jails currently. It gives them the skill set when they leave. And then you get into a true apprenticeship program, 3 to 5 years. Because even with our licenses, they needed to have the whole experience verification unit where they have to have those 4 years to apply. So either way, you need to get into trade that. You can't just get out and then own your own business.
And it's tough, right? It's not just starting your own business and then to have somebody coming out that's been incarcerated and to go into apprenticeship to where there is some type of mentorship. They need that. They need that guidance, to get them to where they're at to eventually go into business. So it's tough. I mean, just going through the apprenticeship myself, I enjoyed the having somebody there, to kind of guide me the first couple of years, and so I would think it would be the same for them.
I guess I would also just say that a lot of the folks are an appropriate age and fitness level for construction. So I know there's a lot of people that are more elderly, but a lot of them are not. We have amazing people that came out of prison that are just exactly right for construction.
Sure.
Superintendents is some of our best guys. I think all these things.
I appreciate all the feedback. I'm more concerned about a person having a job, leaning toward owning a business later on if they're at a younger age, but at least having a job to fulfill their livelihood. So I appreciate the conversation. I look forward to having more dialogue about pushing forward to streamline it a little bit better and clarify some of the issues and concerns. So thank you very much for the comments. And with that, I did my public comments, board and public, so the turn here will get on you. And so I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. And with that, we're going to go into a closed session right now. And so we'll ask those we can public.